cracker is actually a derogatory term, but not to people of color. It's actually to white people. But that wasn't why the cracker's in the name. The old white man, because, well, they talked about it as an uncle so-and-so that was supposed to be that figure. So back in the 1800s, early 1900s, crackers were shipped in barrels and, to the country store. And then what happened was that barrel became like a meeting place, kind of like the water cooler is, well, not these days, but kind of in the 70s and 80s, how the water cooler in a company was that kind of gathering place where people talk. Cracker Barrel back then was kind of the water cooler of its day. And so that was the founders that was their vision. So they actually started as a company, was what they're going after, the motif they're going after, and kind of that homey atmosphere and a gathering place for people. So there's nothing derogatory about it. There is nothing racist about it. It was really to epitomize what the Cracker Barrel stood for, was a gathering place, and it gathered people. Thriving in Tandem. It's a podcast for you, the married entrepreneur that wants to win in business and marriage at the same time.
Welcome to Thriving in Tandem.
Hey, Thriving in Tandem family, and welcome back to this week's brilliant episode.
Hi, you guys.
And we got a good one because unless you've been living under a rock, well, and by the time this thing gets aired, but unless you've been living under the rock, you kind of seen what was going on with the Cracker Barrel. Like, you may not know in depth what happened, but there was an uproar behind, a lot of the big things were made about the logo, but it was more than just the logo. But that was kind of the tip of the iceberg that really set everything off. And so we're not coming to just necessarily rehash some of the backlash. What we're going to talk about, coming at from a business perspective, business and marketing perspective, of the mistakes they made that you want to avoid. Because even with a big corporation like that, with all the hundreds of millions of dollars they put into this thing and all the market research and focus groups and all the things you're supposed to do to, before you launch a new initiative, especially as something as big as a rebrand like this, it wasn't just the logo, it was the menu, it was the decor. I mean, it was really everything from top to bottom, from inside to out. And, it was all in the intent to expand the market, was basically what they're saying. And I mean, there were some political statements that people made and all that, and all that withstanding, I mean, if you just look at it strictly from a business perspective and trying to expand the market to a demographic that really wasn't really their core, they made some big mistakes. And some mistakes, actually, this isn't new because Bud Light did it before them. Coca-Cola did it way before even them. And this was, Coca-Cola, the mistakes they made, there was no political backlash. It was more just a strict branding issue or business issue. But regardless about the political statement and all that, if you just look at purely the business and marketing perspective, they made some big mistakes that even small business like you and I could make if you're not careful. So we want to use this episode for you to learn the backstory behind this. And I was with Coca-Cola right after that new Coke debacle in the mid-late 80s. So I kind of came in after the fact. Knowing what happened, knowing the backstory and what happened into it, I could see some some really obvious mistakes after the fact that I guess some of the other big corporations have not learned from that. So I think if every business, whether it's big business or small business, can just learn from that Coke mistake, they would probably have avoided the big issue that Cracker Barrel and Bud Light and all those things happened. Because expanding the market, good. That's fine. I get that. But there's a way to do that. And they definitely did it the wrong way. So look, we're going to kind of dive into that. Ready, honey?
Well, too, yeah. And I want to say, too, with Cracker Barrel, it seemed like they wanted to do a lot at one time.
Yeah, I mean, that's not necessarily real new. But yeah, they did. There was a lot of changes really quick. And the logo was just an epitome of what they were doing. If you just look at the logo changes itself, and that was just, like I said, the tip of the iceberg. They were trying to do that all throughout the organization, through the business. They basically took out the cracker in the barrel.
What do you have left
Out the logo. They just left the words. Cracker is actually a derogatory term, but not to people of color. It's actually to white people. But that wasn't why the cracker's in the name. The old white man, because, well, they talked about it as an uncle so-and-so that was supposed to be that figure. But the
It could have been a co-founder too. I mean, I don't
yeah,
know.
it wasn't, but that wasn't who they're trying to emulate. But it was just the culture that we're trying to epitomize,
Mhm.
because this did start in Tennessee in the South. And so the old guy with overalls leaning up against a Cracker Barrel, a barrel basically, which is a Cracker Barrel. So Cracker Barrel actually get its name from the Cracker Barrel. There's actually a Cracker Barrel. So back in the 1800s, early 1900s, crackers were shipped in barrels and, to the country store. And then what happened was that barrel became like a meeting place, kind of like the water cooler is, well, not these days, but
Mm.
kind of in the 70s and 80s, how the water cooler in a company was that kind of gathering place where people talked.
And took their breaks
Yeah,
and
caught up with each
meet up with each
other,
other.
talk stories, catch up on the news, that kind of stuff. So the Cracker Barrel back then was kind of the water cooler of its day. And so that was the founders that was their vision. So they actually started as a country store in a country store. And so anyways, that was what they're going after, the motif they're going after, and kind of that homey atmosphere and a gathering place for people.
Mhm.
So that was kind of foundation of the brand.
Probably somebody that was just coming in from working the fields all day and in his
Yeah,
overalls and
they're back in the day, they're working hard outside,
farmer.
right? And so that is the kind of the short version, short story of the brand. And that's hence the Cracker Barrel and the name. So there's nothing derogatory about it. There is nothing racist about it. It was really to epitomize what the Cracker Barrel stood for, was a gathering place and it gathered people. So if the current management was just got that, understood that part, that would have really, I think, changed our approach on trying to expand the market.
Well, and then you can better explain what you're all founded on
Yeah. And so
and where your name comes
getting
from.
rid of the Cracker Barrel, the actual picture of the barrel and the old guy in overalls, it like just totally, for lack of a better term, whitewashed the whole thing. So when I looked at that new logo, I was like, that is just terrible. I mean,
Mhm.
just from a marketing standpoint, it was just copy. I mean, they literally just took out the heart and soul of the logo
Of the whole
and
business
just
company.
left the text. Right. And I was like, man, you can do a better job on Fiverr, getting some designer in the Philippines on Fiverr to design or redesign, refresh the logo. And that was just, and so then they were trying to redo the menus.
Which that people can really get upset about the menus,
Yeah.
especially the diehards, like, "We come here for macaroni and cheese or fried chicken," whatever it is your
Yeah.
favorites are, 'cause, we all have them. And when that's gone, you're like, "What? That's why I come here."
Yeah. So there was definitely backlash against on some of the items they were going to take off. And then the decor, they wanted to modernize it a little bit. Whereas if you've never been to Cracker Barrel, I mean, go look it up. But it looks like you're in a country kitchen, right? The old wooden chairs and table, and then you have all these artifacts on the
Well,
wall,
it's the
country
whole theme with
artifacts.
the name.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like back in the day, you walk in and they got rocking chairs outside. So
yeah,
there's a whole theme to their name.
yeah. And actually, and where they would do too is there's over 600 locations now. As they're opening up a new store, a team would go out and go to thrift stores and antique stores and look for artifacts that were local. And that was what would go on the wall. So they would kind of localize even every store, even though there's kind of a theme and all that, but they would localize the store by going to local stores and trying to grab things that really spoke to the local area. And so that was their way of kind of customizing it to the area.
Well, I have to say too, they have a gift shop. It's kinda like a general store, but much nicer, and they've got some really cool and neat stuff in there that you wouldn't just find anywhere. I really liked it
Yeah.
for
So
gifts and stuff.
yeah, and so here's the new leadership that been around for a couple of years now, looking to expand the market. Right, it's mainly known for their locations are typically like a big presence in the South, of course, and then there's kind of rural areas because there are some here in Southern
Mhm.
California. But they're more in the outskirts of LA, right? Not necessarily some in LA. I'm not sure, but definitely out in the kind of outskirts, more the quote unquote country areas of LA, and that's where they are. But they really want to reach an urban market, a younger market, a different demographic, right? And all that. And so the mistakes that they made.
And these are good to learn from other people's mistakes because it's less costly and you can grow faster.
Yeah. So the current CEO, Julie Massino, came from Taco Bell, number one, and kind of wanted to do similar to what they do with Taco Bell.
Taco Bell does have kind of I haven't been in one in a while, but it does have more of a
Yeah,
modern
they
feel,
update.
right?
I mean, they've updated it, right? Because
Very
over time, as you update
colorful,
it, yeah,
bright.
certainly. So it was interesting. As I saw an interview just recently, one of the co-founders, it's still alive, Tommy Lowe, said that she has yet to reach out to him. So she's been in the office or in her position for a couple of years now, has yet to even talk to the heart and soul of the brand.
Yeah, don't you think that's interesting?
Yeah,
Like, who knows it any better than him? He
yeah,
started it, and he had from the beginning
the
was there.
background.
Yes, and
Yeah.
why they picked what he picked and why they're doing what they're doing.
So whether you're going through a rebrand or expanding the market and all that, you always want to, sorry for the sirens. Okay. All right. There we go. So sorry about that. But whenever you're going to, whether it's expanding or kind of do some kind of rebrand or something, you always want to make sure, number one, you don't you don't drift from the brand, the core of the brand, the heart and soul of the brand, because inevitably what you're going to do is alienate your core customers. And that's not a good thing, which is what you're seeing here play out with Cracker Barrel. So number one, yeah, one of the founders is still alive. Definitely, if I was in her shoes, that was one of the first things I would do is actually sit down and spend a weekend or a week or whatever, just talking to them,
I
getting
want
to
to know
know
the
them.
story, why
Yeah.
they picked what they did, the name, the
Hmm.
colors, the clientele, and just hear all the great stories behind it
Yeah. Because you
to kind
definitely,
of get a feel of Cracker Barrel.
yeah, because whatever business it is, right, you always want to know the history. You always want to know the heart and soul of the brand. Get to know the owner, the why behind why they started, so that you can epitomize it. Nothing wrong with the quote unquote modernization or upgrades and all that, but you definitely don't want to lose the heart and soul and the feel of the brand. So it's sad to say she has never reached out to him. It's kind of interesting. And so they kind of went their, it seems like their own way. That the CEO was on Good Morning America trying to respond to all the backlash, right? And she was saying how that the response to the rebrand was overwhelmingly positive. Now, whenever people say something like that, and you see all this backlash, and at that point, the stock had already lost about $100 million in value.
Wow.
So that doesn't speak overwhelmingly positive. Like for her to say this even after the fact, right? After the market is their shares, their valuation of their business has taken such a big hit. And to sit there and say that the response has been overwhelmingly positive, well, the numbers don't lie.
Something didn't add up there.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie. When you're losing that much in value, and also when you're starting to lose your customers, and the loyal customers are starting to speak out, something's not right, right? And you got to listen to that. So for her to kind of make
Well,
that
and if she's
statement,
not listening to that, then she probably wasn't listening to the numbers either.
well, so it's because the other thing, so I always take those statements with a grain of salt anyway. Oh, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. So my question was, who was she listening to, or who was the team listening to? And as I did my research, most of like when you're doing, whether it's a logo refresh or changing menus, all that, they were looking at a different demographic they're trying to reach, right? A demographic that wasn't a big part of their customer base. So all the market research and the focusers, maybe not all, but majority, or at least the ones they're listening to, were people that were not part of their core audience, their loyal customers. It was really listing more, they put more weight into what the new demographic that they're trying to reach was saying versus what the loyal customers were saying.
Well, and you already have a loyal customer, so you don't have to spend anything on them. But then when you're like not listening to what they're saying and trying to get a different target market in,
Yeah. And
that's
so
going to cost you a lot more money.
absolutely. So they were, they had made comments like, well, it's just a noisy few that are making a hubbub about the changes, right? And so, right there, I'm like, yeah, it's not a good thing. This
It
sounds,
might have been a noisy few, but they lost billions of dollars.
yeah. And so, like I said, from the logo design to the interiors to the menu, they're really alienating their base. You're hearing the people that love certain parts of the menu that were no longer going to be there. The logo, the interior, right? And in fact, she was said on the interview, Good Morning America, how some of the franchisees that saw the new interiors are saying, "Oh my gosh, how do I get in line to, get a new refresh in the interior and stuff like that?" So she was talking about how the overwhelming response and how the franchisees were really positive about it. Well, even that, I was like, well, that doesn't mean anything, because even the franchisees could like it,
Hmm.
but if the customers don't like it,
The ones that are spending the money.
exactly, it doesn't matter what the franchisees say. At the end of the day, what are your customers saying? What are your loyal customers saying? You alienate them, and that's a big part of that's your base, right? That you can gain a new audience, but lose the business. because you're basically everything I saw and read, they're basically thumbing their nose at their core.
The ones
And
that, their bread and butter comes from.
yeah, and so that is not a good thing. So as you're looking to grow your business too, right? Is making sure, how do I make sure, and whatever changes you're planning to make to in the business, make sure the core, you don't lose the core, right? And how do you expand upon it to reach maybe a new demographic, a new audience without losing the core? And that's basically what makes basically the way you do that is make sure you don't lose the heart and soul of the brand. And in
Mhm.
this case, it's the nostalgia, right? And in fact, what's interesting is I know part of their expansion is to reach a younger audience, a younger demographic. And I just read a YouGov survey that went out, when the logo got put out. What do you feel? Do you like the new logo? Do you not like the new logo? Or do you like the new logo or the old logo? I think that was the survey. Do you like the new logo or old logo? And a little over 70% of all respondents said they preferred the old logo.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that's a high number.
Yeah. And interesting enough, the Gen Z group, because obviously you always kind of split it into different segments to kind of see, is there a difference between, in this case, age group or generations, right? Surprisingly, the group that liked the old logo the most at 83% was the Gen Zers.
And those are the ones that they're trying to
Young
reach
generation.
by revamping everything, the menu, the design inside, the logo.
And so that's interesting. And the further research I did in this, actually the younger demographic is attracted to nostalgia and basically things that that were before them, before they were
I could
born.
totally see that because they're born in the digital age and they see it everywhere.
Yeah, there's kind of a trend or a move towards like de-digitizing, or they're, like I said, they've been born in the digital age, and so they're attracted to things that were pre-digital. And so it's interesting that they're actually, when it comes to the Cracker Barrel issue, that the Gen Zers actually prefer the old and the nostalgia. And so I was like, well, okay, someone missed the mark here. I was like, this, and the discussion about the younger generation liking things that are nostalgic, that had nothing to do with the Cracker Barrel. These are different. This is different
Mhm.
research. This is like just some basic research around. Anyways,
I could totally see that though. Look at music. I
yeah,
mean, listening to the Beatles, that wasn't my era at all, but I don't mind. I like listening to the music. You see that a lot across generations are listening to older stuff. You see it in movies, Sometimes I want to watch a black and white, and yes, they do have black and white movies. That wasn't my generation either, but sometimes it's just fun to go back in time.
yeah. In fact, I'm surprised how many young people, like, I'll hear them listening to some of the rock bands like Def Leppard and AC/DC, and I'm like looking at him like, remember, was it a lifeguard or something? We were at a beach or something. I heard them playing some of this old rock music, and I'm looking at the guy. I'm like, he can't be more than 21. And I'm like, you like this stuff? He's like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm like, so to your point, yeah, I do see, if you kind of open up your eyes, you do see a lot of the younger generation really gravitating and grasping hold of some of these older nostalgia things.
I mean, albums are popular again.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
vinyls.
Old shows. I mean, it's surprising how many of the younger generation even have watched some of these old shows. That's the power of reruns, I guess. It's really interesting. So what does this all mean, right? And so from a business perspective, right, listen to your audience. Anytime you want to make a change, make sure you check in with your core, your base, right? In fact,
And when you say that, I think you really mean it. Check in with your core, like not like what do I want
yeah,
and what do I see and what do I think we need to do? No, it's not about us. It's about our core and what they want, and let them be heard in giving them what they need and are asking for.
yeah. In fact, even like what we're doing now with some of these fun events, that was something that was vocalized, but we never asked them in a survey like, do you want more fun? I mean, no, but we would hear it.
Do you want more fun?
Yeah, we would hear it, and even comments, even unsolicited comments like, "Oh, you guys have a lot of fun." Like, "So you guys have a lot of fun." Uh, and then you start paying attention to it. It's like, "Oh, there's a theme,"
Mm.
right? And so we started, okay, let's roll out these fun activities. The feedback was instantaneous, right? So you're gonna know.
So you
The market
guys,
the market's gonna tell you.
our next one, it was on my bucket list. I always wanted to go to the movies at the beach, and they're showing Mamma Mia. That's going to be so much fun
Yeah.
out under the stars, honey.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many younger people are watching this movie. Probably a lot of them just because it's at the beach and they're young kids or whatever. But yeah, so it's going to be fun. So yeah, I mean that's a personal example of how kind of listen to the audience. What do you need? What's the next phase in our business that we can add into? And these fun events or just definitely something that just hit.
Well, and the music is out, and most people, all different generations, know who they are.
Yeah. And so sometimes, you do some, proactive or intentional research and focus groups and all that. But like in this case, sometimes it's just also just paying attention to what the market's saying
Mhm.
and you can fulfill, what they want. And so I know every once in a while, some people ask me whether it's marketing copy or how to create this service or that product, and they'll ask me my advice, and I'll say, "Well, have you talked to your market? Have you talked to your customers? Talk to your existing customers, see what they think about it,
Mhm.
right?" And so, we too many times we're trying to solve the problem on our own without touching base with our base.
Mm.
And so, what this Cracker Barrel incident can teach us all is make sure just check in with your base anytime even if you're trying to do something positive. Don't have a sacred cow. That's kind of my new phrase these days. Don't have a sacred cow. I mean, don't have something that you just can't undo, or you want to hold on to it like, this is my idea, we're going to do it.
Mhm.
Hook or crook, we're going to do this. Don't have those sacred cows, things that are untouchable. Always be willing to listen to the audience and what they have to say, and then go from there.
Well, and I say be true to your story too. I
Yeah.
mean, nobody like the founder knows the story better than him and why he started it and his heart. And stick to that. Stick to being true to who you are.
Yeah.
Uh, because, it was his baby at one
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And you definitely want to know the story around that.
Yeah. And if you're trying to expand your business, alienating your base is not the way to do it, right? Because you're going to lose people. And yeah, so all that to say is, we can all, I think, hopefully learn some things from the Cracker Barrel story. And Coke did the same thing. I kind of alluded to, this isn't the first go around with the kind of a corporate disaster. Coca-Cola did something similar where they're trying to go into the new market, trying to go after Pepsi customers, basically. And so they create a new formula that was a little bit sweeter, had a little bit closer in sweetness and taste to Pepsi, to try and capture the Pepsi market. All the market research and the focus groups and things, taste tests and all that, it was really geared towards how do these Pepsi customers think about it, right? So all the positive feedback they're getting, overwhelming positive feedback, just like Cracker Barrel, they got overwhelming positive feedback too. And so they just went for it. And sure enough, all heck broke loose. And the loyal customers like, what? You got rid
They
of my
are not
Coke.
having it.
You got rid of my Coke.
Like, I need my Coke. I cannot live without my
Yeah.
Coke. You got to bring it back.
Because I think we all have a favorite taste, right? Whether it's food or drink or whatever. And the minute you mess with the formula, oh, no way.
Yeah.
Right? And so they kind of took them a few months, but they reversed course, brought back the original formula, which kind of in hindsight, the way they could have rolled it out a little bit better was just introduce new Coke, but keep the classic Coke or
I
the
was
old
thinking
Coke.
the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't do that. They just took the old Coke off the shelf, replaced it with new Coke.
So
So
the old
basically,
Coke, sorry, old Coke was original.
well, yeah,
That
that's
was
why they call it old Coke. That's why they
right.
call it old
So
Coke.
I'm surprised they got rid of that one because that was like what started the company.
Yep, but they just did a wholesale
That was
change.
part of their whole story.
Yeah, they did a wholesale change. So basically didn't give the customers a choice, right? Because you always want to give them choices. And so to give or not give the loyal customers a choice, just that just blew everything up.
Yes, that was the Coke that put them on the map.
Anyways, so if you're going to do something, test out the market first, right? Don't just get rid of something, make these changes and don't give your customers an option. Kind of test it out first,
Mhm.
right? And confirm the thoughts that you had, the ideas that you have, that this is a good idea, that this is what the customer wants or whatever, is test it out first before you
Especially
just
with
make a
your
change.
base.
Yeah, exactly. So fortunately well, the story's not over with Cracker Barrel. Even as we record this, yeah, they did recount on the logo. The logo, the old original logo is going to stay. But as far as everything else, and I think the menu items, some of those old menu items that they were going to get rid of, that's going to stay. But as far as the interior and all that, that's kind of yet to be seen because they had the base of the company made a $600 million commitment over the next 5-6 years to just for the whole rebrand.
Oh,
So it was
wow.
more than just the logo. It was the interior design, it was the menus, and there's probably some other
Yeah, because they
things.
wanted it to be kind of like a ranch house back in the day. You know what I mean? The wooden
Yeah,
tables.
well, like an old Old Country Store.
Yeah.
That's the Old Country Store. If look was what they got. That's why it says on the bottom of the logo, Old Country Store.
Mhm.
And so that's exactly what they're going after.
And
Again,
that
it
was the
was
feel of it.
yeah, it was more, and it's less to do with the logo and interior as it is the feel, right? But that nostalgia feel that kind of sets this tone. But ultimately, the menu items too, but ultimately even the customer service.
Mm-hmm.
How does the customers feel welcomed and feel like part of the group and all that kind of stuff? You got to maintain that feel, right? And so, anyways, we'll see what happens over the next few months because they're still kind of rolling things out.
Well, yeah, especially when they have already lost billions of dollars.
Billions. And they've put about 100 millions into the marketing and rebrand, and they lost about almost $150 million in value. So it's about $250 million they've lost so far, or sunk into this, between the loss of company value and then the amount of money they put into this rebrand effort. So yeah, so they still got a ways to go, but not quite billions, but definitely hundreds of millions at this point. And so we'll see where it goes.
Hopefully they can get out of this debt.
Yeah, and well, it's not debt. I think they do have money to invest in this thing, but to kind of bounce back and to right the ship, so to speak, I think it can be done. Right. I think sometimes, to their credit, they did in a week, they reversed course and said, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Well, what was affecting their pocketbooks.
And so it's still early. They can still right the ship. So the story's not over yet. So anyways, but hopefully this is helpful for you as you're building your business. Always listen to your customers. Always listen to your customers, especially your loyal ones. Talk to them first. Touch base with them. They'll also give you ideas of how to improve. So we even talked to that with our clients. It's like, how do you improve? Ask your customers. What are they looking for? Let them tell you where you improve, because you're supposed to be a servant to the customer, right? You don't dictate what they want. You react to what they want, right? And so anyways, that's that, honey. So anyways, this is lessons you can learn in your business from the Cracker Barrel story. So go ahead and share this with another married entrepreneur that should listen to this, because I think this is a lesson that we can all take to heart. Don't lose focus of our core. Don't lose focus of our customers. Always touch base with them. And you do that consistently, you're going to do well. So until next week, God bless you. Thank you for listening to the Thriving in Tandem podcast. Please visit our website, marriedentrepreneur.co, for a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business succeed.
And feel free to leave us a review and share this episode with another married entrepreneur. That would mean so much to us.
See you next week.